So, I want you to imagine this for a second. Imagine you're like 15 years old,
Right.
and you find out that you are solely responsible for saving the entire world from a literal magical apocalypse. You fight an actual war, you win, and then
You just go back to normal.
exactly, you have to spend the rest of your natural life just pretending you are this completely ordinary, everyday person going about your routine.
Which is, frankly, just an impossible psychological task.
It is. And that's what we are getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive where we are opening up a stack of documents that, honestly, they just defy belief.
They really do. It's an incredibly dense archive we're looking at today.
Yeah, we have these historical records, highly classified accounts, and some deeply intimate personal letters, plus these sprawling genealogical charts, all centered on one specific lineage, which is the Collins family.
Right, and if you think you're just looking at a standard family tree here, you are wildly mistaken.
Oh, totally. I was saying earlier, it's like a set of magical Russian nesting dolls. Like every single time you pry one open, expecting to find, the solid center of the story.
Another massive generational secret just spills out onto the table.
Yes. So what's our mission here? What are we really tracking in this deep dive?
Well, what we are really tracking here is the anatomy of a hidden legacy. Because, history has this really stubborn habit of refusing to stay buried.
Well, for sure. No matter how much dirt you throw over it.
Exactly. So, over the course of this deep dive, we are going to trace a thread that spans, well over a century.
It's a massive timeline.
It is. We are going to start with a no-maid-born witch in the late 19th century who operated in the absolute shadows. Then we'll move forward in time to a highly privileged pure-blood healer grappling with this profound, suffocating personal tragedy.
Right.
And finally, we arrive at a quiet, modern-day teenager who is right on the precipice of inheriting both of those massive, invisible burdens.
And what's wild to me is that these three women couldn't be more different on paper. But they are tethered together by this incredibly specific, incredibly dangerous, magical inheritance.
It really redefines the whole concept of a family heirloom.
It does. Like, think about your own family for a moment. You look in the mirror and maybe you see your grandfather's nose, or you have your mother's particular laugh.
Or maybe you inherited an old pocket watch or a recipe for a really good pie.
Right. But what if you unknowingly inherited a fundamental world-altering power? And what if, along with that immense power, you inherited an actual, literal ghost?
A guardian who has been pacing the stone floors of a castle basement for over 100 years.
Just waiting for you to be born. I mean, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because in this family, you aren't just inheriting the past.
No, you are inheriting a terrifying responsibility for the future.
Exactly. So to understand the weight resting on the shoulders of the teenager at the end of this lineage, we absolutely must go back to the spark that ignited this entire timeline, right?
We have to examine the genesis point. Before we can look at the present, we have to look at how this all started.
Which takes us straight to Massachusetts.
Right.
The year is 1875. We are in Salem, and a girl named Erin Rose Miller is born.
And right away, the genealogical records give us a very precise physical description, which, as we will see, it really echoes down the generations.
Yeah, those genetics are strong.
Very strong. Erin has deep copper hair, honey brown eyes, and incredibly pale, heavily freckled skin. But it's not her appearance that defines her early life.
No, it's her bloodline, because she is born to a no-mage family.
Right. To use the British terminology, muggles. Her parents have absolutely zero magical ability.
None at all. No history of it, no awareness of it.
They are entirely ordinary people living in 19th century America.
And not just anywhere in America. They are in Salem.
Oh, we have to pause and just think about the historical gravity of that for a second. I mean, Salem.
It is literally the epicenter of anti-magic paranoia in American history. Exactly. It is a town whose entire identity is built around the fear and, well, the eradication of witches. And suddenly, in 1875, actual magic manifests in this perfectly ordinary, non-magical family.
The historical irony is staggering. The records actually note that her magical abilities manifested, and I quote, much to the consternation and bewilderment of her kin.
I feel like consternation is the understatement of the century, though.
Oh, absolutely. It would have been psychologically fracturing for the family. We have to consider the mechanics of accidental magic in children.
Right, because it's usually triggered by high emotion, isn't it?
Yes. Fear, anger, extreme joy. Things explode, objects shatter, children end up hovering on the roof.
And for a no-mage family in New England, lacking any framework to understand this, I mean, it wouldn't just be bewildering, it would be terrifying.
They would likely think their child was fundamentally broken, or worse, cursed.
Yeah. And into this environment of pure fear and confusion, a representative from the Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry just knocks on the front door.
It is the standard protocol for magical schools worldwide to identify and retrieve magical children born to non-magical parents.
Sure, but the American context is intensely secretive, right? Because of those historical tensions you mentioned.
Exactly. The Ilvermorny representative arrives to explain that their daughter possesses a singular nature, and so Erin leaves everything she has ever known behind.
Just packs up and goes.
She travels to Ilvermorny at age 11, and she is sorted into the Thunderbird house.
Okay, so remind us of the mechanics behind the Ilvermorny sorting, because it's slightly different from Hogwarts, right? What does Thunderbird actually signify for student?
Well, Ilvermorny's 4 houses represent different aspects of a witch or wizard. Thunderbird represents the soul.
The soul.
Yes. Traditionally, it is said to favor adventurers. It's a house for those who are driven by a deep internal calling rather than, say, pure intellect or raw ambition.
Given the trajectory of Erin's life, being sorted into the house of the soul is incredibly telling.
It really is. So she spends her early teenage years there, finally finding a place where magic is normal.
Right, she finally fits in.
But then, in her 15th year, the baseline of her new reality completely shatters.
And this is where the records get absolutely fascinating. At age 15, Erin goes to one of her professors at Ilvermorny and confides that she has started seeing things.
But importantly, she isn't hallucinating.
Right, the text specifically says she is perceiving sights veiled from the eyes of others.
So she is suddenly estranged from her own reality all over again.
This is what I was trying to wrap my head around. Imagine you're living your life, and one morning you wake up, and you can suddenly see the world in, like, infrared.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. But you are the only one. Everyone else around you just sees standard colors. And you are walking down the hallway, pointing at these massive, glowing, vibrating fields of energy in the air.
These foundational structures of the world.
Exactly. And all of your classmates, who are literal wizards, by the way, are looking at you like you belong in a ward.
It wouldn't just be isolating, it would be deeply terrifying. You finally found a world where you belong, and now you realize you don't actually belong there either.
Yes. So the infrared analogy works perfectly, because what she is perceiving is not an illusion.
No, it's not. She is perceiving the foundational bedrock of reality. She is seeing the traces of ancient magic.
And how does that differ from regular magic?
Well, standard wand magic, the kind taught at Ilvermorny or Hogwarts, is highly structured. It requires incantations, specific wand movements, predictable theoretical frameworks.
And like writing code, right?
It's exactly like writing code. Ancient magic, however, is elemental. It is the raw, pre-verbal force that underpins the natural world.
And almost no one can perceive it, let alone wield it.
Which explains why her Ilvermorny professor reacts the way they do. They realize they are completely out of their depth.
Right. But they don't dismiss her as crazy.
No, they don't.
No.
The professor recognizes the description of what she is seeing because they were acquainted with a very specific, very niche body of academic work.
Professor Eliezer Fig.
Yes. They knew a Hogwarts professor named Eliezer Fig, and crucially, they were familiar with the scholarly pursuits of Fig's late wife, Miriam.
Right. Miriam Fig had spent her life researching this exact obscure phenomena.
Precisely.
So the Ilvermorny professor sends an owl across the ocean to Professor Fig, and then, and this part is wild to me, they just transfer her.
They do.
They take this 15-year-old girl and send her across the Atlantic Ocean to Hogwarts. But wait, hold on. Let's look at the mechanics of this for a second.
That's quite a leap.
It's a massive leap. You don't just put a kid on a boat to Scotland because of an academic hunch.
Yeah.
Was it even remotely ethical to pull her out of school and ship her to a foreign country to study with a man she has never met?
From a modern perspective, it sounds like an absolute failure of duty of care.
Totally.
But we have to understand the extreme specialization of magical knowledge in the late 19th century. The wizarding world isn't a monolith where all information is universally shared.
Right, it's very siloed.
Incredibly siloed. Miriam Fig's research wasn't just an obscure side project. It was virtually the only existing theoretical framework for ancient magic.
So when Erin described those glowing traces, the Ilvermorny professor didn't just see a confused student.
No, they saw a potentially mythological power structure activating in a teenager.
Wow. So it wasn't just an academic exchange program, it was containment.
It was survival. Keeping her at Ilvermorny might have provided social stability, but magically, it would have left her fundamentally vulnerable.
Because she wouldn't know how to control it.
Exactly. She was beginning to tap into a power that can literally reshape reality. If she didn't learn how to understand it, it could consume her.
And Professor Frank was the single person on the planet with the foundational context required to help her navigate this ability.
They sent her to him because there was quite literally no other option.
Okay, so she arrives in the UK, she's far from home, and the supposed safety of this transfer is completely obliterated within the first hour.
Yes, the historical accounts of her arrival are completely wild.
They are. Before she even sets foot in Hogwarts, the flying carriage bringing her to the school is attacked by a dragon.
A visceral and brutal introduction to the stakes of her new life.
Visceral is the word. We have these romanticized ideas of magical schools, the feasts, the sorting hat, the cozy dormitories.
A warm welcome.
Exactly. But Erin's introduction is a mid-air fight for her life against a massive, fire-breathing apex predator. The carriage is torn apart. People die.
It is a violent, abrupt severing of whatever childhood she had left.
Yeah, there is no gentle orientation week for her.
Yeah.
The moment she touches British soil, she is thrust into life-or-death stakes.
And that sorting hat ceremony, which happens late and under incredible duress, places her in Gryffindor.
The House of the Brave.
Yeah.
Which she's going to need, because that dragon was just the appetizer.
Sadly, yes.
Under Professor Fig's guidance, she starts investigating why she can see these ancient magical traces. And this investigation leads her deep beneath Hogwarts to a hidden subterranean chamber.
The map chamber. This is a crucial pivot point in the archival records. The map chamber isn't just a room. It's an incredibly sophisticated magical construct built centuries prior. And within it, Erin makes contact with 4 individuals.
Or rather, the portraits of 4 individuals.
Yes, the portraits of Percival Rackham, Charles Rookwood, Neum Fitzgerald, and Sam Buckar.
The Keepers.
The Keepers.
Hmm.
These 4 witches and wizards lived centuries before Erin, and they possessed the exact same rare ability. They, too, could see and wield ancient magic.
So on one hand, this must have been an incredible relief. After feeling like a freak in Salem and then feeling like a freak among wizards, she finally finds 4 people who see the universe exactly the way she does.
She finds her predecessors.
Right. But on the other hand, they don't exactly offer her a warm hug and a cup of tea. They offer her a series of potentially lethal trials.
Because they didn't just build the chamber to hang out, they built it to guard a catastrophic secret.
Right. So let's talk about the danger here. We have to explore the geopolitical landscape of the wizarding world in the late 1800s to understand what she stepped into.
Yes, because she doesn't just have to pass these ancient labyrinthine trials to prove her worth to the Keepers. She has to do it while fighting a literal 2-front war above ground.
Okay, let's talk about Ranrock. Who is Ranrock?
Ranrock is a goblin, and he is leading a violent, widespread rebellion against wizardkind.
But he isn't just fighting with traditional goblin silver or standard weaponry, is he?
No. Ranrock has somehow discovered the existence of this ancient magic. More specifically, he has discovered a massive subterranean reservoir of it that was corrupted centuries ago.
Okay, wait. How does ancient magic get corrupted? What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, ancient magic in its purest form is tied to the natural order. But like any elemental force, if you attempt to extract it, synthesize it, and infuse it with human or goblin emotions.
Emotions like rage or pain.
Exactly. Rage, pain, or the desire to subjugate. If you infuse it with that, the magic itself turns malignant. It becomes a volatile, highly destructive substance.
And Ranrock wants to unearth this corrupted reservoir and use it as a weapon of mass destruction to wipe out wizarding society entirely.
Yes. The structural inequality of the wizarding world, the denial of wands to goblins, the centuries of marginalization has calcified into this world-ending rage.
And as if a goblin warlord with a magical nuke isn't enough, Erin is also fighting a dark wizard named Victor Rookwood.
Who notably is a descendant of one of the Keepers in the map chamber.
The family drama is everywhere. Rookwood has formed an alliance with Ranrock. So to recap the life of this 15-year-old...
It's overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah.
She's trying to catch up on 5 years of magical education so she doesn't fail her OWL exams. She is sneaking out at night to fight bands of dark wizards. She's fighting an army of rebel goblins.
And she is delving into ancient, deadly dungeons to pass the Keeper's trials.
The sheer physical and psychological exhaustion she must have been operating under is unimaginable.
And it all inevitably accelerates toward a massive, devastating climax beneath the school.
Tell us about that climax.
The records detail a subterranean confrontation of epic proportions. Ranrock manages to breach the final repository. He harnesses this corrupted ancient magic and literally transforms himself into a monstrous magic-fueled dragon.
Again, she's 15. She's fighting a goblin who has mutated into a corrupted magical dragon in a cavern deep beneath a school full of sleeping children.
It's the ultimate nightmare scenario.
And she wins, but the cost is horrific.
This is where the narrative takes its darkest turn yet. In the chaos of this final battle, Professor Eleazar Fig, the man who brought her across the ocean, her mentor, her singular anchor in this deeply confusing and dangerous world, he is killed.
He sacrifices himself to help her defeat Ranrock and contain the magic.
Yes, he does.
It's devastating. I mean, he believed in her when no one else even understood her. And she manages to do it. She defeats Ranrock.
She manages to corral and contain this immense volatile repository of corrupted magic so it doesn't detonate and destroy the school or the world.
But here's the detail in the source documents that made me stop dead in my tracks.
The secrecy.
Yes. The records explicitly show that after she saved the world, she kept it entirely to herself. The text states, "The world remained unaware of the catastrophe she had averted."
She didn't tell the headmaster. She didn't tell the Ministry of Magic.
She and the keepers just sealed it back up. Why? I mean, why on earth wouldn't you report that there is a dormant weapon of mass destruction sitting under a school? Was keeping the wizarding world in the dark actually the right call?
Because a very fair question.
I feel like this secrecy could be a ticking time bomb.
It is a profound philosophical decision regarding the corruptibility of power, and it's a decision that requires a shocking level of maturity from a teenager.
Right, because what's fascinating here is that she chose the path of the silent guardian.
Exactly. Think about the nature of institutions. Think about the Ministry of Magic. If Erin had emerged from those caverns and declared, "I have secured a repository of magic that can alter the foundations of reality," what would the Ministry have done?
Well, they wouldn't have destroyed it.
No. They would have classified it. They would have sent teams of unspeakables to study it. They would have tried to harness it, to weaponize it for national security.
Oh, absolutely.
And inevitably, because human nature is flawed, someone within that institution would have been corrupted by the sheer temptation of that power, just as Ranrock was.
So by keeping it a secret, she is making the active calculation that the good guys cannot be trusted with this any more than the bad guys can.
She understands that a power that can mend or mar the very foundations of magic is simply too great a temptation for any governing body.
Wow.
So she chooses the path of the silent guardian. She absorbs the trauma of the war, the grief of Fig's death, and the immense weight of the secret, and she just carries it alone.
Which brings up a really haunting question for you listening. If you go through all of that, if you save the world at 15, but nobody could ever know, how would that shape the rest of your life?
But how do you just go back to a normal routine?
Right. How do you go to breakfast the next morning in the Great Hall? How do you sit in a charms class and listen to kids complain about their homework when you know what is pulsing beneath the floorboards?
The short answer is you never truly reintegrate. The psychological toll of that kind of isolation permanently alters the architecture of your mind.
And we see that perfectly in the next phase of her life.
You do.
The documents map out what happens after she leaves Hogwarts. She finishes her education, and she actually returns to her native shores. She goes back to America.
She marries a half-blood wizard named Nicholas Alexander Collins, who the records note was a man of fine character.
And they establish a life together. They have many children. It sounds like the perfect, quiet, domestic, happily ever after.
It does.
She survived the war, and now she gets to be a mother and a wife. And then, at the age of 50, she dies of natural causes.
Which seems young to us, but in the context of the era, and given the physical toll her teenage years probably took on her body, it's a peaceful end.
It appears to be a peaceful end. Until you turn the page of the archive and the next nesting doll pops open.
This is the twist that really redefines her entire story.
This twist absolutely floored me. She dies at 50, but she does not pass on.
No.
She refuses to take whatever next step exists in the magical afterlife. She remains behind as a ghost.
We really need to unpack the mechanics of ghost making in this universe to truly understand the horror of this decision.
Please do, because it's so strange to choose that.
Right. A ghost is not just a soul hanging around. It is a three-dimensional imprint of a departed witch or wizard. And to become one, a person must have a profound anchoring connection to the physical world.
What kind of connection?
Usually it is a result of immense fear of death, overwhelming guilt, or in very rare cases, an unbreakable sense of duty.
And she chooses not to move on. I mean, if we assume the magical afterlife offers some form of peace or a reunion with loved ones, she is actively choosing to forfeit that.
She is choosing not to see her husband Nicholas again in the beyond.
She is choosing not to reunite with Professor Fig. Instead, she becomes a shade, and she crosses the Atlantic Ocean one last time, returning to the basement of Hogwarts.
She voluntarily traps herself in the exact location of her deepest trauma to serve as the eternal secret keeper of the ancient magic.
I read this and I just felt this profound sadness because it raises an important question. Is this a noble sacrifice or a tragic inability to let go of her trauma?
That is the core debate. It is the ultimate manifestation of PTSD masquerading as duty.
That's such a powerful way to frame it.
If we analyze the juxtaposition of her life, you have a woman who lived for 35 years after that battle. She raised a family, she laughed, she loved, she built a home.
But inside,
Fundamentally, a core part of her psyche never actually left those caverns beneath the school.
she was frozen in time. The keepers told her she was the guardian, and she internalized that so completely that even her own death wasn't enough to relieve her of the post.
And consider the implication of her waiting. The records state she remained to guide the next person who might possess the unseen sight.
Meaning the problem wasn't actually solved.
Exactly. This means she knows the problem was never permanently solved. The corrupted magic is still there. The threat is dormant, not dead.
So she is standing guard, decade after decade, watching generations of students walk the halls above her.
Waiting for the cycle of violence to repeat itself.
And as she is pacing those dungeons, the decades roll by. Her children have children. Those children have children. The Collins line continues.
And the world they are living in changes drastically.
It really does. Which brings us to a descendant born generations later into a completely different kind of psychological warfare. Let's shift our focus and talk about Katherine Taylor.
Right, moving from a world-saving Gryffindor to a quiet, stifled Ravenclaw. It's a fascinating pivot.
The physical inheritance is immediate, though.
It is. The genealogical charts show Katherine possessing the exact same deep copper hair and pale, heavily freckled skin as her ancestor Erin.
Though Katherine's eyes are a deep blue rather than honey brown.
Yes. But that is where the similarities end, because the environment Katherine is born into is the absolute polar opposite of 1875 Salem.
Right. Katherine is a pureblood witch. She is born in a massive, opulent manor in London to Eleanor and Edward Taylor.
The Taylor family is an institution unto itself. They are a generations-old potions dynasty.
Ah, so they have a lot of prestige.
Immense wealth and societal status. They built their fortune on the creation and distribution of cures for complex magical ailments.
So Erin was a no-mage born, thrown into a literal war with dragons and goblins. Katherine is a pureblood heir locked inside a gilded cage.
A very apt description.
But honestly, as I read the accounts of Katherine's childhood, the psychological damage feels just as profound, just in a completely different way.
It's the difference between trauma by fire and trauma by ice.
Oh, wow. Trauma by ice.
Yes. Katherine is born relatively late in her parents' lives. They cannot have any more children. Therefore, Katherine bears the entire crushing weight of the Taylor family legacy on her small shoulders.
And her mother, Eleanor, demands absolute, uncompromising perfection in every aspect of her life.
The sources say she was educated in the finest manners and elegance, but it's clear she was forced to completely suppress any actual emotion.
I kept thinking of an analogy while reading this section. Katherine's childhood sounds like growing up inside a museum.
A museum.
Yeah. It's incredibly beautiful. You have access to everything, but you aren't allowed to touch anything, and you certainly can't be yourself.
That's a great analogy. It connects to the bigger picture of pureblood expectations.
Right, because everything has to be perfect on the surface.
Exactly. In these upper echelons of magical society, pureblood aristocratic expectations often prioritize the appearance of magical prowess over the emotional well-being of the child.
Magic is just a metric of success to them.
It must be controlled, refined, and presented flawlessly.
And there is a specific anecdote in the records that perfectly captures this toxicity. Magic often manifests spontaneously in children, right? We talked about that with Erin.
Yes, accidental magic, usually very messy.
Right. But Katherine is 7 years old. She's in the massive drawing room of the manor, and she simply makes a book fly down from a high shelf into her hands. It's controlled. It's precise.
Her father, Edward, who the records note tried to be warm but ultimately lacked the spine to stand up to his wife, is genuinely impressed by the display.
But Eleanor looks at her 7-year-old daughter performing intentional magic, and says she felt the display could have been more remarkable.
It is a devastating emotional paper cut.
It's so cold.
Eleanor isn't looking at her daughter with maternal pride. She is evaluating an asset's performance, and she finds it lacking.
And because Edward won't intervene, Katherine is left entirely alone. She is an only child wandering this massive, echoing London manor.
She has access to incredible libraries. She learns to play the piano beautifully, but she is completely starved of basic maternal affection.
She learns very quickly that showing emotion leads to criticism. So she shuts down.
She retreats into the intellect. This is a classic, deeply ingrained defense mechanism.
Right, if you can't feel safely, you just think instead.
Exactly. If the realm of feelings is a minefield where you are constantly judged and found wanting, you relocate to the realm of logic. You rely on study, rules, and empirical facts.
Which naturally leads to her Hogwarts sorting. She arrives at school and is immediately sorted into Ravenclaw, the House of the Mind.
And she basically treats Hogwarts exactly how she treated her manor back home. She isolates herself.
She spends her entire time hidden away in the library, buried in textbooks.
Her father sends her weekly owls, trying to maintain a connection, but her mother rarely writes at all.
Katherine is desperately craving a mother's love, but she has built such impenetrable walls around herself to survive Eleanor's coldness that she wouldn't know how to accept that love, even if it were offered.
She is perfectly poised to live her entire life in this state of emotional deep freeze.
Until she hits her 5th year. It's always a 5th year in this family.
It really is the turning point for them.
In her 5th year, someone finally figures out how to bypass the wards she set up around her heart. Enter Anthony Joseph Collins.
A Gryffindor.
A completely unapologetic Gryffindor. The records describe Anthony as spirited, free, and incredibly expressive.
He is the loud, chaotic energy that Katherine has been meticulously trained her entire life to avoid.
And the collision of these two archetypes, the restrained, intellectual Ravenclaw and the exuberant, emotionally present Gryffindor, it's a tale as old as time.
But what makes their dynamic so compelling in the records is how their eventual professional paths mirror what they did for each other emotionally.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the archival documents. Let's look at their careers after Hogwarts. Anthony becomes a curse breaker for the Ministry of Magic.
And Katherine becomes a healer at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries.
We really need to explain exactly what a curse breaker does because it's so metaphorically perfect. It is not simply waving a wand and shouting a counterspell, right?
Not at all. Curse breaking is highly dangerous, intricate work. It requires deconstructing ancient magical traps and malevolent spells layer by microscopic layer.
It is the magical equivalent of bomb disposal.
Exactly. You have to understand the intent of the person who cast the curse to dismantle it safely.
Which is exactly what he did for Katherine.
Precisely. Anthony applied the mindset of a curse breaker to the emotional fortress Eleanor Taylor had built around her daughter.
He didn't force the walls down?
No, he carefully, patiently deconstructed them. He recognized the generational curse of emotional suppression that Katherine was laboring under, and he dismantled it.
He taught her that it was safe to feel, to be messy, to be expressive.
He literally broke the spell her mother had over her, and the transformation in Katherine is profound.
They fall deeply in love, they get married, and they settle down in a village called Godric's Hollow. They have a daughter named Agatha.
And Katherine, who is raised by the coldest mother imaginable, actively chooses to break the cycle. She becomes an intensely warm, loving, present mother.
And there's a magical manifestation of this, isn't there?
Yes. The physical manifestation of this internal healing is seen in her Patronus. The records note she successfully casts a corporeal Patronus taking the form of a white swan.
Let's delve into the mechanics of the Patronus charm for a second, because it's so relevant here. It's not just a shield.
No, the Patronus is a projection of a witch or wizard's most positive foundational emotions. It is pure, concentrated hope and protective instinct.
And for Katherine, who spent her childhood suppressing all positive emotion to appease her mother, the ability to produce a corporeal Patronus is a massive triumph.
And the form it takes, the white swan, is highly symbolic. It represents grace and elegance, yes, but swans are also fiercely, aggressively protective of their young.
It perfectly encapsulates her identity as a healer and a cycle-breaking mother.
It's this beautiful, hard-won victory. She finally has the warm, loving family she was denied as a child.
But the Collins family timeline does not allow for long stretches of peace.
Unfortunately, no. The perilous nature of Anthony's profession finally catches up to them.
The specifics are redacted in the records, but Anthony falls victim to a fatal curse while on assignment for the ministry. He dies at the age of 30.
leaving behind a 30-year-old Katherine and a 10-year-old Agatha.
In an instant, the man who taught Katherine how to feel again is gone. And the cruelty of this specific tragedy is just breathtaking.
It is. Because Katherine isn't just a grieving widow, she is an exceptionally talented healer.
She is a master of mending the body. She spends her days at St. Mungo's, fixing broken bones, reversing hexes, brewing complex restorative potions.
She has the power to heal total strangers of horrific injuries.
But she was utterly powerless to save the one person who saved her. And I have to ask, because the records note that this guilt absolutely consumes her. She develops severe insomnia. She paces the house at night.
It's a terrible burden.
Is her current dedication to St. Mungo's driven by a true love of healing, or is she punishing herself?
That is the complex psychology of a magical healer facing a fatal curse. In the no-mage world, we accept the limitations of medicine. But in a world where you can regrow missing bones overnight, the inability to stop death feels like a personal failure, rather than a natural inevitability.
Right, it feels like she just didn't cast the right spell.
Katherine is running up against the absolute hard limit of magic. There is no potion for grief. There is no counter curse for death.
And yet, despite this crushing numbness, despite losing her anchor, she does not revert to the coldness of her mother, Eleanor.
No, she doesn't. She stays present for her daughter, Agatha.
Which requires a monumental daily exertion of sheer willpower. She is carrying this massive, silent burden of grief, much like her ancestor Erin carried the silent burden of the ancient magic.
They are both women defined by what they are enduring in the dark.
Which brings us to the physical location where all of this modern grief is playing out. The geography of this story is so important.
They are living in Godric's Hollow.
Let's talk about Godric's Hollow. What is the history there?
Well, Godric's Hollow is a deeply significant location in the wider wizarding world. Nestled in the West Country of England, it is the birthplace of Godric Gryffindor.
But more pertinently to modern history, it is a shared wizarding and muggle community bound by the strictures of the International Statute of Secrecy.
And it is globally famous for a specific tragedy.
It is the village where James and Lily Potter were murdered, and where they sacrificed themselves to save their infant son, Harry, on October 31st, 1981.
The town square literally has a war memorial that, if you have magical blood, transforms into a statue of the Potter family.
It is a village steeped in the history of survival, profound loss, and ancient bloodlines. It essentially functions as a monument to grief.
And the juxtaposition here is just staggering.
It is. You have this village that is internationally famous. Witches and wizards probably make pilgrimages to Godric's Hollow to pay their respects at the Potter Memorial.
They stand in the square and reflect on this massive, world-altering sacrifice.
And meanwhile, here's where it gets really interesting. Just down the street, inside a quiet little cottage, Katherine and Agatha are living out their own completely private, invisible version of that exact same grief.
The world mourns the Potters loudly, but the Collins women are mourning Anthony in total silence.
And the archive provides us with direct access to that silence. We have copies of the letters written between the family members during this period, and they are essential for understanding the psychological state of the final descendant in our timeline.
These letters are devastating because they are so profoundly human. Let's look at the letter Katherine writes to her late husband, Anthony.
She sits down in this quiet house, unable to sleep, and she writes, "They say time softens the blow, but I find I miss you more with every breath I take. I miss the way you made the tea, always a bit stronger than mine."
It is always the mundane details that anchor grief. It's never the grand sweeping moments. It's the tea. It's the footsteps in the hall. It's the absence of the everyday routine that makes the loss inescapable.
She writes to him asking for courage. She says, "Help me find the path when the shadows feel too long." And then she signs off with this line, "Until we meet again in the clearing at the end of the path."
Now, analyze that specific phrasing in the context of the broader family history. The clearing at the end of the path implies a deeply held fundamental belief in reunion after death. Oh, wow.
Katherine is enduring her current agony solely on the promise that she will see Anthony again in the next great adventure.
That is so heavy.
It is. Katherine is banking her entire survival on reuniting with her husband in the afterlife.
And yet, beneath the floors of Hogwarts, her thrice-great-grandmother, Erin, actively, willingly forfeited that exact same reunion with her own husband.
Erin chose the basement. She chose the ghost life.
It creates a brilliant, heartbreaking contrast between the two women. Katherine's hope is anchored in moving on. Erin's duty anchored her in staying behind.
And caught in the middle of all this grief is Agatha. The records include a letter from 10-year-old Agatha to her mother, Katherine.
Agatha writes, "Mom, don't forget that Dad will always be with us, tucked away in our hearts."
It is the simple, desperate comfort of a child trying to parent her own grieving mother.
And Katherine writes back, noting how much of Anthony's spirit she sees in Agatha. He really is right here with us, isn't he? They are doing everything they can to hold each other together. They are carrying this massive emotional weight in the quiet rooms of Godric's Hollow.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the culmination of this entire deep dive.
We pull all the threads together, history, magic, grief, and destiny landing squarely on the shoulders of an 18-year-old girl.
Let us look closely at Agatha Erin Collins.
The physical genetics are incredibly resilient. Even after generations, Agatha shares the signature traits of her ancestor: ginger hair, pale, heavily freckled skin.
Her eyes are light blue, like her mother's. She is a half-blood witch born on January 18th.
But when she goes to Hogwarts, she doesn't follow her mother into Ravenclaw or her father into Gryffindor. Agatha is sorted into Hufflepuff.
The House of the Badger. The house that values hard work, patience, justice, and above all, profound loyalty.
The personality profile the records provide for Agatha is incredibly detailed, and it paints a picture of a very complex teenager.
She is described as dreamy. She wears her heart on her sleeve, which makes sense, given that her mother raised her in an environment completely devoid of the emotional suppression Katherine herself suffered.
Agatha is allowed to feel, but those feelings are heavy. She is deeply sensitive. The text notes she is shy, but fiercely caring toward the few people she lets in.
But she also has a defense mechanism. It's not her mother's intellectual wall of logic. Agatha's defense is physical withdrawal.
The records explicitly note that she has a habit of isolating herself whenever she feels insecure or unwanted.
If she perceives rejection, she retreats to her room, she pulls away. She is prone to feeling deeply lonely even when people are around.
She is an empath who absorbs the emotional temperature of a room, and when it gets too hot or too cold, she removes herself.
She is a girl who understands the fragility of the human heart because she watched her mother's heart shatter when she was 10 years old.
And this shy, insecure, self-isolating 18-year-old Hufflepuff is the center of our Russian nesting doll.
Because the records reveal the final, massive secret of the Collins family. After over a century of lying completely dormant in the bloodline, the spark has returned.
The unseen sight has manifested again.
Agatha can see the ancient magic.
The foundational traces of reality, the glowing, vibrating bedrock of the world that Erin saw in 1890. Agatha is now seeing it in the modern day.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's really think about the sheer crushing pressure of this reality.
It's immense.
Agatha is already dealing with the lingering, profound grief of losing her dad. She is 18, trying to figure out who she is, struggling with insecurity and the urge to hide from the world.
And suddenly she realizes she possesses a power that nobody else can even comprehend.
And worse, she is going to find out that her thrice great-grandmother is literally a ghost waiting in the basement of her school.
Holding the keys to a magical nuclear reactor that Agatha is now expected to guard.
How is this going to play out? On paper, it looks like a catastrophic mismatch of personality and destiny. Compare Agatha to Erin.
Erin was a Gryffindor. When she was confronted with the terrifying reality of ancient magic and a goblin rebellion, she met that threat with martial courage.
She picked up her wand and she fought a literal war. She was a soldier.
And Agatha is not a soldier.
No. Agatha is a sensitive Hufflepuff who isolates herself when she feels like someone is mad at her. How in the world is a girl who struggles with basic teenage self-doubt going to handle an elemental magic that requires profound willpower, unbreakable mental fortitude, and absolute secrecy?
The Keepers and Erin's ghost are going to expect a warrior to walk through that door.
Exactly.
They might expect a warrior, but I would argue that the narrative poetry of this bloodline has produced exactly what the magic actually needs.
Wait, really? How so?
Let's analyze the nature of the magic itself. Ancient magic is highly volatile. It is intimately tied to the emotional resonance of the user.
Right.
Ranrock sought to control it through rage, ambition, and a desire to dominate. Erin controlled it through sheer force of will, driven by duty and the trauma of war.
And Agatha?
Agatha is defined by her empathy. She feels things more deeply than anyone else in her family. A power that has the potential to mend or mar the very foundations of the wizarding world shouldn't necessarily be held by a soldier who is accustomed to fighting.
It requires a guardian who intimately understands the fragility of life.
Precisely. Because Agatha knows exactly what it means to be broken. She lost her dad when she was 10. She watched her exceptionally strong mother have to rebuild her entire psychological framework from scratch.
Agatha understands the cost of destruction on a deeply personal level.
Exactly. Her empathy is not a liability, it is her anchor. A Gryffindor might be tempted to use the ancient magic to fight a righteous war.
A Slytherin might use it for ambition.
A Ravenclaw might experiment with it to expand knowledge. But a Hufflepuff deeply attuned to the emotional pain of others and valuing peace above all else, would understand that true strength often lies in restraint.
Oh, wow. That completely reframes the entire inheritance.
Her instinct to isolate, to withdraw, to protect. Those are the exact instincts you want in a secret keeper.
Because Agatha understands that some secrets must be kept. Not because you are afraid of the enemy, but because you care too much about the safety of the world to risk it.
So Erin's ghost has been pacing the dungeons for a century, expecting another battle-hardened warrior to come take her place.
And instead, the magic chose a healer of a completely different sort.
The culmination of a century of family history has perfectly forged Agatha for this role.
The no-mage isolation and trauma of Erin, the stifling emotional control imposed on Katherine, the curse-breaking, cycle-ending love of Anthony.
All of those historical ingredients mixed together to produce a fiercely loyal, deeply empathetic Hufflepuff.
A Hufflepuff who has the emotional capacity to hold a world-ending power and simply say, no, I won't use this.
It is a remarkable, profound legacy.
It really is. Just to zoom out and recap the sheer scale of the journey we've taken today. We started in 1875, looking at how a no-mage-born witch in Salem discovered a power no one else could see.
She transferred to Hogwarts, saved the entire wizarding world from a goblin dragon apocalypse at age 15, and then willingly sacrificed her own afterlife just to guard the terrifying secret of what she had done.
We examined how her pure-blood descendant, Katherine, endured an agonizingly stifling upbringing in a London manor.
Found liberation through the love of a curse breaker, and then had to navigate the devastating premature loss of that husband.
Ultimately channeling her profound grief into her work as a healer and her dedication as a mother.
And we brought all those threads together in the present day, arriving at an 18-year-old girl in Godric's Hollow.
A girl who is right on the cusp of inheriting both the immense emotional trauma of her family's recent past and the world-altering magical destiny of her ancient ancestor.
A destiny that has literally been waiting for her patiently in the shadows of the school she attends.
It is a testament to the idea that the past is never truly dead.
In the wizarding world, it is often pacing in the basement.
Which leaves me with one final thought. Something for you to mull over long after this deep dive is over. We talked about those letters from Godric's Hollow.
Yes.
10-year-old Agatha wrote to her grieving mother, trying to comfort her about the loss of Anthony. She wrote that her dad was tucked away in our hearts.
It's a beautiful, completely normal sentiment about memory and grief.
But consider the reality of the world the Collins family actually lives in. Agatha possesses the ability to perceive and wield ancient magic.
A raw, foundational power that we know is deeply tied to the emotional resonances and unseen fabric of the universe.
And she has a thrice great-grandmother who is actively, physically waiting for her as a ghost at Hogwarts, proving definitively that the dead can and do stick around if their sense of duty or fear is strong enough.
The barrier between the past and the present is highly permeable for them.
Exactly. So in a lineage like the Collins family, a family bound by this incredibly dense, highly emotional, immensely powerful ancient magic, does anyone ever truly stay gone?
It's a fascinating question.
When the very foundation of your family's legacy is built on the refusal to let go, does their love, their grief, and their magic simply wait in the unseen spaces for the right moment to make itself visible once again?
It certainly makes you wonder what invisible forces and perhaps invisible guardians might be walking quietly alongside us.
It really does.
Thank you for joining us as we explored this extraordinary archive.
We absolutely love uncovering the hidden histories layered beneath the surface of our world, and we're so glad you came along for this one. Keep asking questions, keep looking closely at the past, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.